survives.
I wake up.
Boring. Boring.
The live-action remake of the 2010 film How to Train Your Dragon is here, originally an animated property from DreamWorks about a young boy called Hiccup who cannot become the Viking that is expected of him by his village and specifically by his father, played by Gerard Butler. He instead endeavours to learn how to love and train dragons and eventually comes across one called Toothless that he befriends and learns to ride, and uses this as a method to essentially change the community around him forever and turn them from dragon slayers into dragon riders, lovers, that sort of thing. The original film is one that as a kid I loved. I think I saw this in the cinema. It was one of the few films that I actually was lucky enough to see in the cinemas. I didn't see a lot growing up. But it is one that has faded deeply from my memory. So going into this, I watched the original, and I have to say it still holds up in my opinion. In comparison, this remake is by far the worst film of the year so far. It is excessively bland. It changes the lifeblood of the movie, which is that it is bright, vibrant. It feels like a kid's movie. It feels like something that is geared towards teaching kids a lesson. This new one is almost a family drama. It feels aggressively dramatic and, tragic in places, and it feels self-serious in all of the wrong ways. This isn't a family drama like Hereditary. It's not attempting to teach us something. It's not a horror movie that is deeply engrossed in the path through grief and loss. It's nothing like that. This is just a self-serious movie that has lost its comedic touch because it is no longer in animation. I would challenge anyone to watch the original and then watch this remake and find anything original that they can take from the remake that was not there in the original. It is excessively boring. I found myself yawning at the end of the film. I found myself wanting to just go on my phone in the cinema, which I never do. I abhor people that just sit on their phone for 5 minutes, regardless of how bad the film is. And this was one where I was like, Jesus Christ, I don't know what the fuck I'm still sat here trying to respect this film for, when it doesn't respect itself, it doesn't respect the audience, it doesn't respect the characters, and it certainly doesn't respect the original material that it is based on. I've watched ISIS beheading videos that are more entertaining than this. If I went back and watched the Jihadi John tapes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for a full year, Clockwork Orange style, I think I could probably find more enjoyment and soul in those tapes than I could if I did the same experiment with this film. It's aggressively boring and there's no soul here. There isn't anything about this film where I go, oh, that's original. I like how you gleaned that from the original and went, let me explore that and twist that and make it into its own thing in this film. It doesn't do anything like that. The one or two things that it does change, done purely to update it for 2025 and are specifically geared towards making this film more palatable to audiences in 2025 in ways that maybe it wasn't in 2010. For example, one of the things that was much maligned in the run-up to this film was the casting of Astrid as a mixed-race girl, the young actress who played Sarah in the first episode of The Last of Us Season 1. I'm going to start off by saying I could give a fuck whether she's black or white. This is clearly an absurdist premise, a concept, and you see it in the first film that they have no respect for history. They're not attempting to make this a historically accurate Vikings film that just has dragons inserted into it. That is not the narrative here. This is clearly absurdist, so I don't care about that, quite frankly. With that being said, one thing that I don't understand about this film is that they go out of their way to say that the Asian characters in the tribe come from the Far East. They go out of their way to say the black characters in the tribe come from Africa. So if you're doing that, you are attempting to make this a more grounded live-action remake of the original film. That's fine. So where are your rules? Where is your background on the tribe? How did they end up here? How have they lived so long fighting dragons? On that topic, where do the dragons come from? What are the rules about the dragons? Will they only eat certain things? Do they only come out at certain times? Do they abhor the light and only come out at night? There isn't any of that. The film only expands on certain things that it needs to expand on because it is 2025, because it is current year. And I have no issue if the film wants to portray this as a gritty, dramatic, real-world historicism in a sense where you go, well, no, there were Africans, there were East Asians in this tribe. All right, fine, I have no issue with that. But then stick to your own rules. Ditch the absurdism of the first film, which you don't do. You still use that sort of same absurdism that is present in the animated 2010 version, because you know if you ditch that altogether, then you have to change the script. You have to move away from that. It's very soulless and is designed entirely around making this a more palatable film that has diversity, because now you need diversity in every movie. And again, I don't have an issue with that. But if you're going to then justify that and say, oh, well, this is diverse for this reason and apply logic, then you have to then follow that through. Or you just go, they're here, we don't care about historicism, we don't care about historical accuracy. There are black people, there are Asian people, there are whatever else in this tribe, because this is an absurdist concept. Then, all right, fine, but follow that through. Don't then attempt to tell me why there are black people and why there are Asian people in this tribe. That is irrelevant. You don't need those rules. So you're caught between going, well, we need the absurdism of the original movie, and then you're going, oh no, but we want rules over here. And it's just very strange to me. And there are also lines included in this film that aren't in the first film that feel like overt references to pushing peace and love and forgiveness, and they feel like direct references to the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Killed hundreds of us! And we've killed thousands of them!
I just sort of feel like that is unnecessary, given that the original film is already about love and forgiveness and sort of moving past grief and moving past hating one another and understanding that if we just go down that road, it doesn't end up happy, it doesn't end up in a good place. So the added lines are only really there to emphasize it, and all it emphasizes is that sort of comparison that I have to think is deliberate, but it doesn't expand on it. It doesn't really enhance it in any way. It just sort of is there to draw attention to itself. If you just didn't do that and just continued to adhere to the script of the original film, there were enough sort of allusions to that sort of theme that you could pick up on that anyways and go, oh, this is an allegory about the Israel-Palestine conflict. This is an allegory about the Sudan. Those are already there from the original 2010 film. You've just added that so that the people who are aware of the original and who now will go and watch the remake go, oh, that wasn't there before. That must be about something that's happening now. What's that about? Oh, it must be about Palestine. Let's move away from that sort of stuff because, you know, race, Palestine, all right. This is still a kid's film at the end of the day. Some people will probably laugh at this, but I think it is a genuine criticism that I have of the writing of this film. Hiccup cares way too much about impressing Astrid in this film. In the original, he just sort of is like, yeah, she's there, and he just kind of finds her fit, and that's it. And then at the end of the movie, he kisses her. There's basically nothing in between. But in this film, he almost wants her to know about the dragon because he thinks that she's going to find it cool. And she sort of does in the end. It's much more of a love story in this film. There is a scene included in the middle of this film where Hiccup attempts to basically pick her up. She just outright refuses him. My issue with this, I get that maybe I'm nitpicking here, but I am sort of like, why would a teenage boy care about that? If this was me and I had the choice of going out with this really fit girl, or I could continue to fly the dragon around that I have just found, why the fuck am I going to care about her? She's irrelevant. I have a dragon. Fuck her. I don't care about her anymore. There's a dragon. And for some reason, the movie sort of attempts to make us think that Hiccup cares about both equally. And I just don't believe that whatsoever. He's meant to be like 15, 16. Why would he care about her? If I found a dragon now, at the age of 23, nearly 24, I would be like, yeah, fucking, who gives a shit about this girl here? I've found a fucking dragon. I'm gonna go ride the fucking dragon because that's what I care about. And so maybe it's a nitpick, maybe it's a stupid criticism, but it's one that I had to bring up because I was aware of it the entire film, of just sort of the idea that I'm meant to think that he would care about this girl when there is a dragon that he is literally able to ride around on, constantly. The other sort of nitpick that I have is that the scene towards the end of the original, when Hiccup is fighting the dragon in the pit at the end of the film, in the original, Hiccup screams and Toothless hears that and comes to rescue him. In the remake, Toothless hears the dragon, not Hiccup, and comes and fights the dragon. My issue with this is that it changes the provenance, it changes the tone and the context. Toothless is not coming on behalf of Hiccup, he's coming because he heard a dragon. This would imply, in my opinion, that Toothless is going, oh my god, there's a dragon here. I haven't seen a dragon in however long. I'm going to go find the dragon. This sort of changes it, in my opinion, and suggests that Toothless wants to go back with his people. He wants to go back to the dragons. He doesn't care about Hiccup anymore. So I just don't understand the change here, because it suggests that Toothless is only with Hiccup because he can't leave. It changes it from this relationship that Hiccup and Toothless have in the original animated film, where they deeply care about each other at this point. And this is part of a wider criticism that I have with this film, which is that Hiccup and Toothless, there isn't a relationship here in this film, partly because I just imagine that the budget on this film was ridiculous if they actually showed Toothless as much as they need to make him be a believable character as he is in the first film. In this film, Toothless isn't there. He's basically just a CGI sort of monstrosity, and he does look terrible, by the way. And in this, I sort of don't believe that Hiccup cares about Toothless, and I don't believe that Toothless cares about Hiccup, because they don't actually have that much time alone where they sort of learn to love each other. And the only scenes where you actually feel for Hiccup and Toothless are the ones at the end, and which are only really wholesome and heartwarming, because they are ripped directly from the previous incarnation of this film. And so the relationship is destroyed with that one scene, and the relationship doesn't really exist at all. And when it comes to the acting in this film, Mason Thames does not at all sell the idea that he actually has a relationship with this dragon. I don't believe him as Toothless. He has no soul in him. He's essentially just acting opposite a CGI green screen the entire time. So I don't really know what he's meant to do. He's only 17, so I can't really blame him for this. Gerard, Butler and Nick Frost, they're just here for cash grab. Fine, I don't really care about that. I understand why they would do this. The twins that are meant to be ironically irritating in the animated version are just genuinely annoying in this version. The only character in this film that I actually sort of got a laugh out of was Fishlegs, and the only character I actually got any enjoyment out of this film was Fishlegs, one of the kids played by Julian Dennison, who I wasn't aware of before this. I'm not saying necessarily he did a great job, but he probably did better with the lines than pretty much anyone else in this film. I actually felt a bit sorry for him at the start of the film, because for some reason the jokes in this film, and I would say jokes in air quotes because they're not really jokes, they're not really funny, but when they do make a joke, and particularly the ones that are aimed at him, feel like fat jokes. If you're going to make this a mean-spirited comedy, then fair enough. I'm not going to say there isn't a place for that in kids' films. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. It's a uniquely different tone than the first film, and it is one that is only really there maybe 2 or 3 times, and the majority of those jokes are at his expense and are at the expense of his weight. So it feels like a weird inclusion, and I don't really get it. But he's the only actor that I was like, oh yeah, he's doing an alright job. I wasn't blown away by him or anything. He's only really in the film for maybe 10 minutes at most. Good on him, I guess, especially because he's getting taken the piss out of the entire time. The directing, the only things that I have to say about this, why does the film look like this? And why is it 2 hours? There's an extra 20 minutes on this film. None of that time is used well. I don't in any way think that the expanded time is worth it. I don't think that anything that is added here is worth it. The majority of the expansion is sort of making Astrid more of a character and less of a love interest as she was in the first film, although she sort of still is just a love interest. And there is a scene towards the start of this film that is probably going to get picked apart on Twitter, because she directly talks to Hiccup and says, you've had all this privilege, you've had everything given to you, I've had to work hard for it. And it's that sort of scene that will have, your fucking anti-woke brigade go, oh, well, she was only cast as a black woman because they wanted this scene in the film. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I just think it's dumb and out of place, especially because by the end of the film, she literally tells Hiccup, I am here by your side. Okay, so now is she buying into a patriarchy? Is she buying into a racial hierarchy? I don't really understand what the message is here. And so maybe you should have just then changed Hiccup's gender and maybe his race and said that the new Hiccup, the female Hiccup, the black Hiccup, is fighting against the patriarchy of this Viking civilization. And again, is unnecessary because this film from the 2010 version is dealing with this sort of industrial military complex where both sides just fight for the sake of it and don't really understand why they're doing it. They're just doing it because that's what they've always done. So none of the allusions to Palestine, none of the allusions to race or gender actually enhance this film in any way. It just bogs it down and just gives more fuel to the fire that the right-wing anti-woke brigade are looking for anyways. So just go by the script. Your film's still going to be bad. It's still going to be bland and boring, but at least you're not going to get the glean from those people who are looking for it from this film anyways. And ultimately, I don't know how any of this appeals to children anyways. This runtime is aggressively boring. It's 2 hours of slop and it doesn't look like anything that kids would want to watch. I will put up images side by side of the same moment when Hiccup finally touches Toothless's nose, and you tell me which one you would rather see as a kid or which one you would rather see now. I think it's quite obvious, and I don't understand where they think that anything in this film is going to appeal to kids. And this is just a cash grab based around people that have already seen the original. I don't see how this is going to bring in anyone new, other than maybe they have projections about the How to Train Your Dragon merchandise or reruns that suggest that this franchise is incredibly popular in ways that we don't see as consumers. I can't recommend not watching this film enough. Go and watch anything else. I cannot fucking wait to rewatch this film at the end of the year to decide if it is genuinely the worst film I've watched and put it on a list to talk shit about this again for another 5 minutes. I never want to see this film again. It's so bad. It's so boring. I've never wanted to fall asleep in a movie theater so badly. If I'd fell asleep halfway through this film, I wouldn't have been able to film this review. And there's nothing else out this week, so I would have been fucked on a video. But at least I wouldn't have had to finish this film.